I faked a trip to my cousin's house, but I actually stayed hidden at my neighbour's place, watching my own home. What I discovered in the early hours of that Thursday made me realize that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who betray us the deepest. My son and daughter-in-law were hiding something so disturbing that when the truth came out, my life was never the same. But before I continue, please check if you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Grace, I am 62 years old, and I live in New York City. This house where I have lived for 35 years was built brick by brick with the sweat of my late husband, Arthur. Every room tells a piece of our story. The front porch where we used to drink coffee every Sunday, the backyard where my son, Robert, learned to walk, the kitchen where I prepared thousands of meals with love. When Arthur passed away 5 years ago, Robert insisted on moving in with me along with his wife, Pamela. I believed it was genuine concern, the love of a son who didn't want to see his mother alone. How naive I was. The first few months seemed normal. Pamela was kind, helped with the household chores, and baked those apple pies I liked so much. Robert fixed what was broken, took care of the lawn, and talked with me about baseball and politics. But about 3 months ago, something changed. It started with the whispers. I would walk into the living room, and they would stop talking abruptly. Robert would hide his cell phone when I came near. Pamela would change the subject with that forced smile that fooled no one. I would ask what they were talking about, and always receive the same empty answer. Nothing important, work stuff, just silly things. Then I noticed that the guest room, the one at the back of the house, started to be locked all the time. Before, the door was always left open. I stored antique linen, boxes of photos, and things I no longer used in there. When I asked why they were locking the room, Pamela answered too quickly that there was humidity and they were protecting my things. But I never authorized anything like that. The nights became strange. I would hear noises coming from that room after midnight. Footsteps, low voices, movement. One early morning, around 2 o'clock, I clearly heard the front door opening. I got up quietly, peeked down the hallway, and saw Pamela welcoming a young woman, maybe in her early 20s. They talked in a low voice, and the girl handed her something that looked like money. Pamela quickly counted it, put it in her pants pocket, and led the young woman directly to the back room. The key turned in the lock. I returned to bed with my heart racing, trying to understand what was happening in my own home. At the following breakfast, I acted as if I hadn't seen a thing. Pamela was overly cheerful, and Robert was distracted on his cell phone as usual. I asked if they had slept well, and they both said yes, as if that nighttime visit had never happened. My head was spinning with thoughts. What were they doing? Why were they receiving people secretly from me? Why were they locking that room? I tried to use my master key to open the back room door when they went out, but I discovered they had changed the lock. They changed the lock on a room in my house without telling me. I felt the anger rise in my throat, but I controlled myself. Confronting them without proof would be useless. They would deny everything, invent excuses, maybe even make me doubt what I had seen myself. I needed a plan. That's when I thought of faking a trip. I would say I was going to spend a week at my cousin Maria's house in Miami. I would leave the house empty and watch from afar what they did when they thought I wasn't around. But watch from where? That's when I thought of Mr. George, my next-door neighbor. He is 68, a widower like me, and has always been a reliable friend. The following afternoon, I crossed the low fence separating our properties and knocked on the back door of his house. Mr. George was watering his plants when he saw me. I could tell by his expression that something was wrong. "Grace, it's good you came. I need to tell you something." We sat in his kitchen, and what I heard chilled me. Mr. George said he had noticed strange movement at my house for weeks. Different people coming and going, always at night, always with suitcases or backpacks. He thought they were friends of Robert's or relatives of Pamela's, but he started to be suspicious when he saw money being exchanged at the door. My stomach churned. I told him my suspicions, what I had seen, the whispers, the locked room. Mr. George nodded sadly. "I think your son and daughter-in-law are using your house for some business, Grace. I don't know exactly what, but it's nothing good." That's when I put the complete plan together. I would fake the trip and stay in Mr. George's guest room. From his upstairs window, he had a direct view of my house. We could watch everything without being seen. He agreed immediately, worried about me, offering help like a true friend does. That same evening at dinner, I dropped the news. "I'm traveling to Miami tomorrow." Maria has been insisting for a long time, and I decided to spend a few days with her. The reaction was instantaneous. Robert lifted his eyes from his plate with a strange sparkle. Pamela smiled too much, overly enthusiastic. "That's wonderful, Mum. It will do you good." "We'll take care of everything here." Robert agreed too quickly. "Yes, Mum. Enjoy it. Get some rest. Everything is under control here." The poorly disguised relief on their faces confirmed everything. They wanted me gone. They needed me out of the house. The next morning, I went through the whole performance. I packed the old suitcase, putting in clothes, toiletries, everything in their sight. I called Maria loudly from the living room so they could hear. My cousin was aware of the plan and agreed to participate in the act. Robert insisted on taking me to the bus terminal. At the terminal, he hugged me and told me to call him when I arrived. I looked into his eyes for guilt, remorse, any sign that the child I raised still existed in there. But I only saw haste. He wanted to see me leave soon. I entered the terminal as if I was going to catch the bus, but I waited hidden for half an hour and exited through another door. I took a taxi and asked the driver to drop me off 2 blocks before my street. I walked to Mr. George's house through the back entrance. He already had everything prepared. The guest room overlooking my house, binoculars on the nightstand, a comfortable chair by the window. Now all that's left is to wait, Grace. The first few hours were deceptively calm. Pamela went to the market in the morning. Robert went to work, as always. The house was empty and silent. But when night came, everything changed. Around 7 o'clock in the evening, a car pulled up in front of my house. 2 people got out, a young man and a girl, both about 25 years old. They were carrying large backpacks. Pamela opened the door before they even rang the bell, as if she was already expecting them. There was a quick conversation at the door. I saw the young man take money from his wallet and hand it to Pamela. She counted the bills quickly and invited them inside. My heart pounded. I had just seen my daughter-in-law receiving a payment from strangers and letting them into my house as if it were a hotel. Mr. George was beside me, witnessing the same scene. "Are you seeing that, Grace?" he asked. "It's exactly what I told you. They're renting out your house." The rage I felt was like a fire in my chest. Renting rooms in my house, the house I built with my husband, without my knowledge, without my permission, transforming my home into a clandestine business. I wanted to cross the street right then and confront them in front of those strangers, but Mr. George held my arm. "Calm down, Grace. If you go now, you'll only know this much. But if we wait, we'll find out everything. How long have they been doing this? How many people? How much money? Then you can act with all the cards in your hand." He was right. I took a deep breath, trying to control the fury. I sat back down by the window, my hands trembling in my lap. Over the next hour, I saw lights turn on in several rooms of my house, the living room, the kitchen, and then that back room they kept locked. Now I understood why. There was no humidity. There were guests, strangers sleeping in the same space where I stored my late husband's clothes for years, the photos of our life together, the memories of 35 years of marriage. Tears started running down my face without me realizing it. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of betrayal. How could my own son do this to me? How could he look me in the eye every day, knowing he was using me in this way? Around 9 o'clock that night, Robert arrived from work. He entered the house normally, as if it were just another day. Half an hour later, another couple appeared. Even younger, they seemed to be traveling. Pamela repeated the ritual. Money in hand, professional smile, door opening. I counted mentally. 4 strange people inside my house. 4 strangers occupying my space, using my water, my electricity, my gas. Mr. George made a quick calculation. If each one pays about $200 a night, they're pulling in $800 just today. In a month, that's $24,000. $24,000 a month earned illegally using your property, without paying me a dime, without even having the decency to ask me if they could do this. The night went on, and the lights in my house went out one by one. The guests settled in. Robert and Pamela also went to sleep. Everything returned to silence, as if nothing bad was happening. I stayed awake all night, unable to close my eyes, knowing that strangers were sleeping under my roof. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the front door opened. The first couple left with their backpacks. A car was waiting for them. They left quickly, discreetly, like ghosts disappearing with the daylight. Half an hour later, the second couple did the same. By 7:30, all the guests were gone. Pamela went out to the yard with a trash bag, threw it in the can, and went back inside. Everything was clean, tidied up, as if the night before had never existed. Robert left for work at 8 o'clock, wearing a suit, carrying his briefcase, with that responsible man posture. But now I knew the truth. During the day, I watched Pamela cleaning the house, changing sheets, tidying up the rooms, preparing everything for the next guests. She worked efficiently, like someone with an established routine. This wasn't new. It was a well-oiled system that had been working for a long time. As night fell, more guests arrived. This time there were 3 people. Pamela greeted them with the same routine, so, payment, smile, door. And I continued watching from Mr. George's window, mentally documenting every movement, every transaction, every betrayal. On the second day of observation, Mr. George told me something that changed everything. It was late at night, almost midnight, when he turned to me with a serious expression. Grace, there's one more thing you need to know. 2 weeks ago, I saw Pamela talking to a man at the corner bakery. It wasn't Robert. It was an older guy, well-dressed, with a leather briefcase. They talked for almost an hour. My heart raced. What man? Mr. George hesitated before continuing. I don't know who he was, but I overheard some words from the conversation. They were talking about documents, about mental health evaluation, about nursing homes. My world came crashing down. Mental health, evaluation, nursing home. Those words resonated in my head like alarm bells. They weren't just stealing from me. They were planning something much worse. Mr. George put his hand on my shoulder. Be alert on Thursday night, Grace. Every Thursday there's more movement. That's when you're going to discover everything. I spent the following days in a constant state of alert. I watched the guests arrive and leave, Pamela managed everything with precision. Robert helped less visibly, but he was a full accomplice. He bought extra supplies, kept the lawn looking nice, and did maintenance around the house. And every night, I saw them counting money together at the dining room table. That table, where we ate together for years as a family. Thursday arrived. Early on, I noticed the atmosphere was different. Pamela cleaned the entire house with extra care. She bought fresh flowers and put them in vases around the living room. She changed towels. She checked every detail. It was as if she was preparing something special. Robert arrived from work earlier than normal. By 6 o'clock in the evening, he was already home helping with the final preparations. And then the movement began. It wasn't just one or two guests like on the other days. They were whole groups. The first group had 5 people. Then 3 more arrived. Then a couple. Then 2 young people, alone. I counted mentally as my stomach clenched. There were 11 people inside my house, 11 strangers occupying every available space. The living room became a common area. The kitchen was full, the rooms all occupied. My house had been transformed into a full hostel. Mr. George watched beside me, incredulous. I never saw so much activity. It's like Thursday is the special day for them. I did the math quickly. If each person paid $160, they would earn more than $1,700 just that night. The hours passed slowly. The guests had dinner, chatted. Some went out for a walk and came back. By 10 o'clock at night, the lights started to go out. The guests settled in. Pamela and Robert cleaned everything up and also went to sleep. The house went silent. But Mr. George had told me to wait, that in the early hours of Thursday to Friday, I would discover everything. So I waited, every muscle in my body tense. The clock on Mr. George's wall marked the passage of time with a ticking that seemed louder and louder in the silence of the night. 11:30, 11:40, 11:50. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel the pulse vibrating in my neck. When the clock struck midnight, I held my breath. The side door of my house, the one leading to the backyard, opened slowly. A silhouette came out. It was Pamela, but she wasn't alone. Behind her came a man I had never seen before, tall, about 50 years old, dressed in dark clothes. He carried a leather briefcase in his hand, the same briefcase Mr. George had described. My heart lurched. What was happening? Why was Pamela meeting this man in the middle of the night? Why were they leaving through the back door like criminals? They walked toward the back of the yard, where the old shed my husband used as a workshop is. Pamela took out a key, opened the rusty padlock, and both went inside. A faint light turned on inside. Through the dirty shed window, I could only see shadows moving. They were talking, gesticulating. Pamela took something out of her purse. Papers. They seemed to be documents. The man examined them with a small flashlight. Then he took other papers out of his briefcase. A thick briefcase, full of pages. Pamela took the documents and started reading, page by page. She nodded several times. It seemed they were finalizing some sort of agreement. The meeting lasted almost half an hour. Finally, the man put everything back in the briefcase. Pamela turned off the shed light. They came out, but instead of returning to the house, they walked to the back gate. There's a small gate there that leads to the alley. Pamela opened it. The man went out that way and disappeared into the darkness. Pamela closed the gate, put the padlock on, and returned to the house through the side door. Everything happened in less than 40 minutes. Silent, secret, invisible to anyone who wasn't watching carefully. I woke up Mr. George, who had dozed off on the sofa. I saw everything. Pamela met with a man in the shed. They reviewed papers, documents. They are plotting something. George rubbed his eyes and looked at the clock. 12:30 in the morning. That man operates in the shadows, Grace. This isn't just about renting rooms. Something bigger is going on. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed sitting by the window, watching my house as if it were enemy territory. At dawn on Friday, the guests started to leave. Some left early. Others stayed to enjoy the weekend. Pamela prepared coffee for those who stayed. She acted as the perfect hostess. Coffee, toast, fruit, all served with smiles. No one would imagine that hours earlier she had been in a clandestine meeting with a stranger. Robert left for work as always. Pamela stayed alone with the remaining guests. This was my chance. I needed to get into that shed. I needed to see if they had left anything, any clue about what they were planning. I told Mr. George the plan. He tried to convince me not to go. Grace, it's too risky. What if Pamela sees you? But I was determined. I have the key to the back gate. I can enter through the alley without being seen. Pamela is busy with the guests in the front of the house. She won't see me. Mr. George finally gave in, but insisted on coming with me to the alley to keep watch. We left through the back door of his house. We walked down the silent alley. It was Saturday morning, and the neighborhood was quiet. Most people were still sleeping or having coffee inside their homes. We arrived at the back gate of my property. I took out the key with trembling hands. The padlock opened with a soft click. I entered my own yard like an intruder, my heart beating out of control. The shed was about 15 yards from the gate. I walked, crouching, hiding behind the bushes I myself had planted years ago. Every step seemed too loud, every breath too audible. Finally, I reached the shed. The door had a simple padlock, the same one my husband had used for decades. I searched for the right key on the bunch. My fingers were shaking so much that I tried 3 different keys before finding the correct one. The padlock opened. I entered the shed and closed the door behind me. Sunlight poured in through the dusty window, creating golden rays in the air. The place smelled of old wood and damp earth. Rusty tools hung on the walls, boxes stacked in the corners. Everything seemed untouched, normal. But then I saw something different on my husband's old workbench. A metal box. It wasn't ours. I had never seen it before. It was grey, modern, with a simple latch. I approached slowly. The box was closed but not locked. Just a catch that opened by pressing 2 side buttons. I tried it. Click. The box opened. What I saw inside took the air out of my lungs. There were stacks of money, bills of $20 and $50. I counted quickly. There had to be at least $6,000 there. All the money they had earned with the illegal business for months. But that wasn't all. Beneath the money were documents. I took them out carefully and began to read. The first one was a lodging contract. A contract where my house was registered as a property available for temporary rental. The owner's name was Robert Silva Costa, my son. But this was impossible. I was the legal owner. My name was on the deed. How could he sign a contract pretending to be the owner? I kept reading. There was a footnote in small print. Property transfer in progress. Documentation pending judicial process. I felt the ground crumbling beneath my feet. Transfer. Judicial process. They weren't just using my house illegally. They were trying to steal it from me legally. The next document confirmed my worst fears. It was a psychological evaluation form, an official paper with the letterhead of a private clinic. And there, in the patient field, was my full name, Grace Rodriguez Costa. The evaluation date was marked for 10 days from now. The reason for the consultation: evaluation of mental capacity and autonomy for decisions due to family concern with progressive cognitive decline. Progressive cognitive decline. They were painting me as a senile old woman, as someone who could no longer take care of herself, as someone who needed to be protected from her own decisions. And it was all a lie. I was perfectly fine. My mind was lucid. My health was good for my 62 years. But they were going to tell a different story. With that doctor, with that fake evaluation, with that process they were already preparing. There were more papers. One of them was a quote from a nursing home. Full life residence. Specialized care for older adults. The price was $1,600 per month. It had yellow markings on the part that said, individual rooms with continuous monitoring. Special program for patients with dementia. They were looking for a prison for me. An expensive, legal place where they would lock me up while they enjoyed my house and my money. The last document was the most terrifying. It was a broad and unrestricted power of attorney, a legal document that would give Robert total control over all my assets, bank accounts, and medical decisions. The document was ready, printed, waiting only for my signature, and next to it was a handwritten note by Pamela. Dr. Mark confirmed he can administer a mild sedative during the consultation. Signature will be obtained in a state of induced confusion. Witnesses already coordinated. Additional cost, $2,000. My hands shook so much I almost dropped the papers. They were going to drug me. Take me to a corrupt doctor. Give me some medication that would leave me confused. Make me sign that power of attorney without me understanding what was happening. With paid witnesses who would say I was conscious. All legal on paper. All false in reality. I heard voices outside. I froze. It was Pamela talking to someone. Probably a guest. They were close. Too close. Quickly, I took out my cell phone and took pictures of all the documents. Every page. Every annotation. Every detail. My hands were trembling, but I managed to capture the evidence. I put everything back in the box exactly as I found it. I closed the box. I locked the shed. I ran, crouching back to the back gate. Mr. George was waiting for me in the alley with a distressed look. I thought they caught you. You were in there for almost half an hour. I couldn't speak. I just showed him my cell phone with the photos. Mr. George looked at the screen. He scrolled from image to image, and his face grew paler and paler. My God, Grace, this is a complete criminal plot. They're not just stealing from you, they are completely destroying you. I nodded my head, as the tears I could no longer hold back ran down my face. I need to call someone. I need to do something now. I can't wait anymore. We went back to Mr. George's house. With my hands still shaking, I called Elizabeth, my lawyer friend. We met 20 years ago in an embroidery group. She was always smart, studious. She studied law at 40 and specialized in family law and probate. If anyone could help me understand the legal implications of what was happening, it was her. Grace, what you are telling me is extremely serious, Elizabeth said over the phone, her voice heavy with concern. If they are operating lodging without a license, without paying taxes, and without your consent as the owner, they are committing several crimes. Fraud, improper use of property, tax evasion. But what worries me most are those documents about mental capacity and the nursing home. Grace, does your son have any power of attorney from you? Any signed paper that gives him power to decide for you? I thought carefully. No, I never signed anything like that. All my documents are in the bank safe deposit box. Elizabeth sighed with relief. That's good. Very well. But listen carefully. If they are consulting someone about declaring you mentally incapacitated, it means they are looking for a legal way to take control of your assets. The process is complex. It requires real medical evaluations, psychological exams, a hearing with a judge. They can't just declare you incapacitated out of the blue. But if they get a corrupt doctor willing to falsify reports, if they have an unscrupulous lawyer who knows the loopholes in the system, they can try. And if they succeed, Grace, they can institutionalize you in a nursing home against your will and legally take your house. Terror overwhelmed me. What do I do, Elizabeth? She thought for a moment. First, you need concrete evidence of everything they are doing. Photos, videos, testimonies. You already have the photos of the documents. That is excellent. Second, you need to protect your legal papers. Make sure they don't have access to anything. Third, as soon as we have enough evidence, we are going to file a lawsuit. I will handle the entire legal process. But Grace, you have to be very careful. If they suspect you know anything, they can speed up their plans. They can try something drastic. Her words chilled my blood. Something like what? Elizabeth hesitated before answering. Like putting medication in your food to make you seem confused in front of a doctor. Like creating situations where you appear unstable. Like fabricating evidence that you can't take care of yourself. I have seen cases like this, Grace. They are more common than people imagine. I hung up the phone with icy hands. Now I understood the dimension of the danger. They weren't just stealing from me. They were setting me up for a worse fate. Losing my autonomy, my house, my identity. Being declared incompetent. Being locked up in an asylum while my son and daughter-in-law kept everything I built. And all under the pretext of legality. With papers signed by doctors and lawyers. With a judge who would never know the truth. On Sunday, Elizabeth came to Mr. George's house. She brought a trusted notary, a gentleman named Mr. Arney, about 60 years old, with a serious but gentle demeanour. Mrs. Grace, I am very sorry for what you are going through, he said, shaking my hand, but I want you to know that we are going to completely protect your assets. When we finish today, your son won't be able to touch a hair of your property without facing a criminal prosecution. Over the next 4 hours, I signed several documents. Elizabeth explained each one patiently. This is a power of attorney revocation. It cancels any power of attorney that may exist in Robert's name, current or future. This one here is a declaration of full mental capacity that will be certified by a forensic psychologist who will evaluate you tomorrow. This is a new will that supersedes any previous version and specifies that Robert is excluded as an heir due to fraudulent acts, and this last one is a request for a protective order that we will present to the judge on Monday. Every signature made me feel stronger, more in control. I was no longer the scared victim spying from the window. Now I was a woman taking legal action against those who tried to destroy me. And the trap? I asked when we finished. Elizabeth smiled. It wasn't a cheerful smile. It was the smile of someone preparing for checkmate. The trap involves you going back home, Grace. My heart leaped. Go back home now? Elizabeth shook her head. Not today. Tomorrow night, Monday, you will return as if nothing happened. As if you really spent the whole week traveling. You'll arrive tired, happy to be home, without the slightest suspicion of what you discovered. And for the next few days, you will act completely normal. Meanwhile, we will be working behind the scenes. Mr. Arney leaned forward. We will also contact the city inspector. An inspector will make a surprise visit to your house. If he finds illegal lodging, he can shut down the establishment immediately and issue severe fines. But there's more, Elizabeth continued. I'm investigating that Dr. Mark mentioned in the notes. He has a problematic history. He has already been investigated twice by the medical board for unethical practices. With your complaint and the photographic evidence, we can open a formal investigation against him as well. If they discover he was willing to drug patients to get fraudulent signatures, he loses his license and faces criminal charges. The magnitude of the plan began to take shape in my head. It wasn't just about stopping Robert and Pamela. It was about dismantling the entire network they had built. The corrupt doctor, the fake witnesses, the illegal lodging business. Everything. How long will this take? I asked. Elizabeth looked at Mr. Arney before answering. The inspector can go this week, probably Thursday or Friday. The doctor's investigation will take more time, but with your formal complaint on Monday, the process begins immediately. And as for Robert and Pamela, she made a dramatic pause. The final confrontation happens when they least expect it. When they think everything is going according to their plan. I spent the rest of Sunday at Mr. George's house, mentally rehearsing how I would act upon returning. I needed to be convincing. I couldn't show anger, suspicion, or fear. I had to be the trusting mother returning happily from her cousin's house, the naive mother-in-law who knows nothing. It was ironic. They had been acting in front of me for months. Now it was my turn to act in front of them. On Monday night, with a suitcase in hand and my heart pounding, I walked toward my house. Mr. George drove me to the corner, but I walked the rest of the way to look like I had arrived by taxi. I rang the doorbell. I heard hurried footsteps inside. The door opened. Robert was there, looking surprised. "Mum, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow." I smiled with the affection a mother holds for her son, even though my heart was broken inside. I decided to come back a day early. I missed my house. Pamela appeared behind Robert. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. "Welcome back, Mum. How was the trip?" I entered the house with the feeling of stepping into enemy territory. Everything seemed normal, clean, tidy, no trace of the guests who had occupied those spaces just 2 days before. Pamela had done an impeccable job erasing the evidence. "The trip was great," I lied with surprising ease. "Maria spoiled me a lot, but you know how it is. There's no place like our own home." They took my suitcase to the room. They prepared tea. They sat with me in the living room asking questions about the invented trip. I answered with stories I had prepared. Restaurants my cousin and I supposedly visited, walks we took, conversations we had. Robert and Pamela listened. They nodded. They smiled. But I saw something in their eyes. Relief. Relief at my return without suspicion. Relief that the secret was still intact. "The house looks very nice," I commented, looking around. "You took perfect care of it." "Of course," Pamela said too quickly. "We cleaned everything. We watered the lawn. Everything as you asked." I took a sip of the tea and added casually, "Even the smell is different. It smells like new cleaning product." I saw a brief flicker of panic in Pamela's eyes. "Oh yes, we did a deep clean. We wanted everything to be perfect for your return." A lie. She had cleaned to erase the traces of dozens of strangers who had occupied my house. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in a week, but I couldn't really sleep. I stayed awake, listening. Around 11 o'clock, I heard muffled voices coming from Robert and Pamela's room. They were talking in urgent whispers. I got up silently and walked barefoot to their door. I put my ear to the crack. "Do you think she suspects anything?" It was Robert's voice, tense. "No. She doesn't suspect a thing, Pamela answered confidently. She's the same as always, naive, trusting. The plan continues. And Dr. Mark? Robert asked. Everything is arranged, Pamela confirmed. The consultation is next Friday. We'll put the sedative in her food at breakfast. We'll say we're taking her for a routine checkup. When she realizes what she signed, it will be too late. The power of attorney will be registered, and we will have total control. There was a silence. Then Robert spoke with a voice I barely recognized as my son's. And after that? After that, Pamela replied coldly. After that, we institutionalize her. We already have the place. The full-life residence accepts patients with cognitive decline. We'll visit her once a month to keep up appearances. And meanwhile, this house will be completely ours. Completely ours. Those words pierced me like knives. I returned to my room in silence, with tears running down my face. But they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of pure rage and steel determination. They had sealed their fate. I had just heard the full confession, and although I hadn't recorded it, now I knew every detail of the plan, including the exact date. The following Friday. I had less than a week to execute the perfect trap. Tuesday morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. I made coffee, prepared breakfast, and talked with Robert and Pamela about trivial things. They were acting too. We were all actors in this macabre play. Each of us knew a different script. But I had an advantage. I knew they were acting. They didn't know I was acting too. As soon as Robert left for work and Pamela went to the market, I called Elizabeth from my room with the door locked. I told her word for word everything I heard the night before. Perfect, she said, satisfied. Friday is the consultation with the corrupt doctor. That gives us time. The city inspector will go to your house on Thursday. It's better to be before they try to drug you. Do you think they will receive guests this week? I thought for a moment. Probably on Thursday night. There's always more movement that day. Elizabeth paused thoughtfully. Then, we are going to coordinate the inspector's visit for Thursday night, when the house is full of living evidence. Over the next 2 days, I kept my performance flawless. I acted as the sweet, trusting mother. I asked Pamela if she needed help with anything. I offered Robert his favorite cookies that I made specially. They seemed relaxed, convinced the plan was still intact. On Wednesday night, Pamela even showed me a brochure. I found a health center that offers preventive exams for people your age, Mum. How about I take you on Friday? It's free for seniors. Free? A lie. They were going to pay $2,000 for that exam. I faked genuine interest. A checkup? Well, that wouldn't be bad. I haven't been to the doctor in a while. Pamela smiled, relieved. Excellent. I already scheduled it for Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll go with you. I nodded sweetly while inside my blood was boiling. She was closing the trap without knowing I had already closed an even bigger one around her. Thursday afternoon, while Pamela and Robert prepared the house for the night's guests, my cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Elizabeth. Inspector confirmed for 9 o'clock tonight. The police will be ready nearby. Stay in your room when he arrives. We'll handle everything. My heart started beating faster. Tonight. Tonight their world would begin to crumble. As expected, the guests started arriving around 7 o'clock. First, a young couple with large backpacks, then 3 young people who seemed to be traveling together. Immediately after, a woman alone with a small suitcase. By 8:30, there were 8 strangers occupying my house. Pamela played her part as an exemplary hostess. Robert helped with the suitcases, showed them the rooms, and smiled professionally. I was in my room, supposedly reading, but actually waiting, watching the clock. Every minute seemed like an hour. 8:40, 8:50, 5 minutes to 9. And then I heard the sound I was waiting for. The doorbell, firm, authoritative. It wasn't the doorbell of an expected guest. It was the doorbell of someone with authority. I heard hurried footsteps, Robert's voice asking who it was, and then a loud male voice from outside. "City Inspector, please open the door." Silence. A heavy, dense silence, and then the sound of the door opening slowly. "Inspector, is there a problem?" It was Robert's voice, trying to sound calm but failing. "We received an anonymous complaint about illegal lodging at this address. I need to inspect the property." "There must be a mistake," I heard Pamela's voice, higher pitched than normal. "This is a private residence. We don't have any business here." "Then you won't mind if I verify," the inspector replied in a professional but inflexible tone. "I have a warrant signed by the municipal judge. If you do not allow me to enter voluntarily, I will return with the police and a search warrant." There was another silence. Then Robert yielded. "Of course, Inspector. Come in." I peeked through a crack in the door. I could see part of the living room. The inspector was a man about 45 years old, wearing an official city shirt with a clipboard in his hand. Behind him came another, younger man, probably an assistant, with a camera. They started walking through the house. The inspector asked questions. "How many people live here permanently?" Robert answered with a trembling voice. "3. My mother, my wife, and me." The inspector looked around the living room. The 8 guests were there, some sitting on the sofa, others standing, all with confused expressions. "And these people are—" Pamela tried to improvise. "They are visiting friends?" The inspector walked up to one of the guests, a young man about 30 years old. "Are you a friend of the family?" The young man, honest or perhaps nervous, replied, "No, sir. I booked a room online. I paid $200 a night." Robert's face went pale. Pamela tried to intervene. "He's confused, Inspector." "I don't know what he's talking about." But the inspector was already walking toward the rooms. He opened the door of what had been my guest room. Inside were the 3 young people with open backpacks, clothes on the bed, and toiletries in the bathroom. "And are these people friends too?" Pamela's silence was answer enough. The inspector took a measuring device from his briefcase. He started counting the occupied rooms, photographing each one. Room 1 occupied by 2 non-residents. Room 2 occupied by 3 non-residents. Room 3 occupied by 1 non-resident. Shared bathrooms with signs of multiple use. Kitchen with utensils for more than 3 people. Extra towels stacked in the hallway. Each sentence was another nail in the coffin of their illegal business. Robert attempted a final defense. "Inspector, this is a misunderstanding. Perhaps we occasionally help acquaintances who need lodging, but it's not a business." The inspector interrupted him. "Do you charge for this lodging?" Robert hesitated. "Well, sometimes we receive a contribution for expenses." The inspector shook his head. "This is called a business. A lodging business. And to operate a lodging business, you need a commercial license, a tourist operating authorization, a fire safety certificate, a health certificate, and the payment of corresponding taxes. Do you have any of those documents?" The silence was absolute. Pamela and Robert looked at each other, defeated. They knew they had nothing. The inspector continued. "According to the city code, operating a commercial lodging establishment without a license constitutes a serious violation with a fine of $6,000. Furthermore, I must inform you that the IRS will be notified of undeclared income. And since this property is registered in the name of, he looked at the documents, Grace Rodriguez Costa, who according to records did not authorize any commercial activity, this may also constitute a fraudulent use of another person's property. I felt it was the moment. I opened my room door and walked out. All eyes turned to me. The confused guests, the inspector with a professional expression, Robert and Pamela with faces of pure terror. "Good evening," I said in a calm voice. "I am Grace Costa, the owner of this property." The inspector nodded respectfully. "Mrs. Grace, did you authorize the operation of a lodging establishment on your property?" I hesitated for an instant, looking directly into my son and daughter-in-law's eyes. "No, Inspector. I did not authorize anything. In fact, I only discovered this situation a few days ago." Pamela took a step toward me. "Mum, I can explain." I raised my hand, interrupting. "I don't want explanations, Pamela. Not now." I turned to the inspector. "What happens now?" He closed his clipboard. "The current guests will have to vacate the property immediately. We will give them 30 minutes to gather their belongings. Your son and daughter-in-law will receive an official notification of the fine and will have to appear before the municipal judge next week." I also activated the police. There are 2 officers outside in case backup is needed for the eviction. The next 30 minutes were chaotic. The guests quickly gathered their belongings, some demanding a refund from Pamela. She had kept the money in her purse and had to return it under the watchful eye of the inspector. Robert remained paralyzed, unable to speak, watching his illegal business crumble in minutes. When the last guest left, the inspector handed me a copy of the official report. "Mrs. Grace, I recommend you consult a lawyer. You have the right to sue for damages." "I already have a lawyer, Inspector. Thank you for your work tonight." When the inspector and his assistant left, the house fell into a deathly silence. The 3 of us stood in the living room. I was standing by the window. Robert sat on the sofa with his head in his hands, Pamela near the door, arms crossed, with the expression of a cornered animal. It was she who spoke first. Her voice was no longer sweet or calculating. It was desperate. "Mum, I know this looks bad, but we had our reasons. The house bills are high. We have debts." I turned to her slowly. "Reasons? Debts? And that justified turning my house into an illegal business without my consent?" Pamela took a step toward me. "We were going to tell you eventually. We just wanted to save money first, to have some cash before—" "Before what?" I interrupted with a sharp voice. "Before you drugged me and made me sign a fraudulent power of attorney?" The silence that followed was deafening. Pamela turned pale. Robert lifted his head abruptly, his eyes wide with shock. "How?" Robert began to say, but his voice failed him. "How do I know?" I completed the question for him, because I was never traveling, Robert. I was here, watching, discovering every detail of your vile and calculated plan. I walked to the center of the room, looking at the 2 of them with an intensity that made them step back. I know about the illegal lodging scheme. I know about the money hidden in the shed. I know about Dr. Mark. I know about the Friday consultation where you planned to sedate me. I know about the power of attorney you wanted to make me sign. And I know about the full life residence where you planned to institutionalize me. Pamela shook her head frantically. No, it's not what you think." "Yes," she said. "We talked to the doctor, but it was just as a precaution, because we were worried about your health." "Stop lying!" I yelled, and my voice echoed off the walls of my own house. I found the documents, Pamela. I saw with my own eyes. I read the notes written in your own hand. Mild sedative during consultation. Signature will be obtained in a state of induced confusion. Those were your exact words. Pamela's face lost all colour. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. I turned to my son. And you, Robert? You, whom I raised, whom I loved, to whom I gave everything your father and I could give. How could you? Robert had tears running down his face. Mum, the financial situation was desperate. We had $16,000 in debt. The bank was going to take our old apartment. Pamela said if we got money quickly, and your solution was to betray me, I interrupted. The solution was to steal my house, my freedom, my dignity. It wasn't stealing, Pamela exploded, her voice sharp. This house is huge. You live here alone. We were just taking advantage of the available space, and as for the power of attorney, it was to protect you. You're getting older. You need someone to make decisions for you. I am 62 years old, I said with an icy voice. Not 80, not 90. 62. My mind is perfectly lucid. My health is good. I don't need anyone to make decisions for me. What you were planning was not protection, it was legalized kidnapping. Robert stood up, staggering. Mum, please, we can work this out. We'll return all the money. We can move out of the house if you want. But please don't report us. If you go to the police, we could go to jail. I looked him in the eyes, those eyes that once looked at me with a child's pure love, and I felt my heart breaking into pieces. And what did you want me to do, Robert? Let you drug me? Let you lock me up in an asylum while you enjoyed my property? It wasn't going to go that far, Robert mumbled. Pamela was just exploring options, but I would never have. I heard your conversation last night, I interrupted again. I heard you planning exactly that. I heard you saying you would visit me once a month to keep up appearances. I heard you turning me into a formality, into an obstacle that needed to be managed. Robert collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing. Pamela remained petrified, her mask of the perfect daughter-in-law finally destroyed. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain composure. Tomorrow is Friday. You had planned to take me to Dr. Mark at 10 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, that is not going to happen. What is going to happen is this. You are going to pack your things and leave my house. You have until noon tomorrow. Pamela reacted immediately. Evict us? Where are we going to go? You should have thought about that before you betrayed me, I replied without emotion. You have family. You have friends. Figure it out. Mom, please, Robert implored. We can't leave like this. We don't have money for a security deposit on a rental. We don't have anything. You have $6,000 in the box in the shed, I pointed out. The money you earned illegally with my property. You can use that for the deposit. Although you will probably have to save it to pay the municipal fine and the lawyer's fees. Pamela turned to me with gleaming eyes. There was no sweetness in her voice anymore. Only venom. You know what? Fine. We will leave your precious house. But don't think this ends here. We're going to hire a lawyer. We are going to contest the fine. We are going to file a lawsuit for improper eviction. I smiled without humor. Go ahead, Pamela. Hire a lawyer. But I warn you that my lawyer is very good. And she has photographic evidence of all the fraudulent documents, of all the criminal plans, of all the details of your illegal operation. She has photos of the hidden money, of the false contracts, of the notes about drugging me. Do you really want to go to court with that? Pamela's face crumbled. Finally, she understood she was completely defeated, that I had played better, that while they were planning to destroy me, I was 2 steps ahead. There is one more thing you need to know, I continued. My lawyer has already filed documents revoking any power of attorney that may exist in my name. She also filed a declaration of full mental capacity certified by a forensic psychologist. And she filed a new will where Robert is specifically excluded as an heir due to fraudulent acts. Robert lifted his head abruptly. You disinherited me? His voice was a mixture of shock and pain. What did you expect? I answered with a tired voice. That I would reward you for trying to destroy me? The rest of the night was tense and silent. Robert and Pamela locked themselves in their room. I stayed sitting in the living room, exhausted but relieved. Around midnight, I heard the sound of suitcases being dragged. They were packing. Reality had finally sunk in. The next morning, Friday, I woke up early. I prepared coffee just for myself. I sat by the window, watching the sunrise over the garden my husband and I had cared for together. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Robert and Pamela came downstairs with 4 large suitcases. They didn't look at me. They put everything in the car, in silence. Robert came back one last time. He left the house keys on the entrance table. For an instant, I thought he was going to say something. Perhaps an apology. Perhaps a final plea. But he just looked at me with empty eyes and left. I heard the car engine start. I heard the tires on the asphalt. The car driving away. And then, silence. My house was empty. I was alone. I stayed sitting in the living room for a long time after they left. The house felt different, bigger, quieter, but also more mine than ever. I walked through each room slowly, reclaiming every space that had been violated by strangers. I opened the windows to let in fresh air. I removed the sheets from all the beds that had been used by the guests. I was going to wash them, but I honestly considered burning them. Some memories don't deserve to be preserved. Around noon, Mr. George knocked on the door. He brought a hot lasagna he had prepared. I thought maybe you wouldn't feel like cooking today, he said with that kindness only true friends have. We sat down to eat together in my kitchen. I told him everything that had happened the night before. The inspector's arrival, the confrontation, Robert and Pamela's expulsion. Mr. George listened in silence, occasionally nodding his head. When I finished, he placed his wrinkled hand on mine. You did the right thing, Grace. The painful thing, but the right thing. Then why does it hurt so much? I asked, my voice broken. Because he was your son, Mr. George replied with the wisdom of his 68 years. Because a mother's love doesn't just disappear because the child betrays you. It hurts precisely because you loved. If you didn't love, it wouldn't hurt. He was right. That night, I cried. I cried for the son I thought I had, and who maybe never really existed. I cried for the family I thought I had built. I cried for the betrayal, for the greed that corrupted my own blood. But I also cried with relief, because I had survived, because I had won, because I was still the owner of my life, my mind, and my house. The following Monday, Elizabeth called me with news. Grace, the complaint against Dr. Mark was accepted. The medical board initiated a formal investigation. I also contacted the district attorney's office with all the evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. They are considering filing criminal charges against Pamela and Robert. I felt a knot in my stomach. Criminal charges. Jail. Elizabeth paused. It's possible. Planned fraud. Conspiracy to deprive an older adult of their freedom. falsification of documents. The accusations are serious. But Grace, the final word is yours. If you don't want to proceed with the criminal case, we can limit ourselves to the civil case. I thought about it a lot. A part of me wanted them to pay fully for what they tried to do to me. But another part, the one that was still a mother, couldn't bear the thought of my son in prison. Elizabeth, continue with everything related to Dr. Mark. That man deserves to lose his license. But as for Robert and Pamela, I need time to think. Elizabeth understood. You have a month before the statute of limitations expires to file the criminal complaint. Think it over calmly. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Robert. The envelope was wrinkled, as if it had been written and rewritten several times. With trembling hands, I opened it. The handwriting was my son's, but the words were those of a destroyed man. Mum, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. I have no excuses. Greed blinded me. Pamela convinced me it was the only solution to our problems. But I was weak. I let it happen. I participated. And now I live every day with the weight of knowing that I betrayed the person who loved me most in this world. The letter continued. Pamela and I broke up. I couldn't continue with someone capable of planning something so vile. I moved alone into a small apartment. I lost my job when the scandal came out. Now I am working as a construction helper, paying the debts little by little. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I am so sorry. If I could go back in time, I would change everything. The memory of what I did to you haunts me every night. The letter ended simply, I loved you. I love you. And I regret having lost you. Your son, who no longer deserves to be called that, Robert. I cried reading those words. A part of me wanted to tear up the letter and forget everything. But another part, that maternal part Mr. George had mentioned, felt my son's pain. It didn't justify his actions. It never would. But it was real pain, real remorse. Or at least I wanted to believe it was. I put the letter in a drawer. I wasn't ready to answer. Maybe I never would be. But I couldn't throw it away either. A month later, I had to make the decision about the criminal charges. I sat with Elizabeth in her office. If I go ahead with the charges, what happens? She was honest with me. Probably 3 to 5 years in prison for both of them. Pamela would receive more time for being the main instigator. Robert maybe less if he cooperates. They would have permanent criminal records, difficulty finding employment in the future. Basically, their lives would be marked forever. I took a deep breath. And if I don't go ahead? Elizabeth leaned forward. The municipal fine is still valid. They will have to pay it. Dr. Mark will lose his license regardless of your decision about Robert and Pamela. And civilly, they are already legally prohibited from approaching you or your property. I closed my eyes. I thought about my husband, about what he would have wanted. I thought about the child Robert was before greed corrupted him. I thought about the kind of person I wanted to be at the end of my life. I am not going to file the criminal complaint, I said finally. Elizabeth nodded without judging. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But it is something I can live with. They will have to live with what they did. That is punishment enough. Elizabeth smiled slightly. You are more generous than they deserve, Grace. 6 months passed since that night the inspector knocked on my door. The house is truly mine again. I hired a professional cleaning company that eliminated all traces of the guests. I painted the walls with new colours. I donated the furniture that had been used by strangers and bought new pieces. I transformed the back room into a sewing workshop. I always wanted a space just for me to sew, and now I have the time and tranquility for that. Mr. George is still my neighbour and best friend. We have dinner together twice a week. He helped me install a security system in the house. Not because I am afraid, but because I now value my privacy more than ever. Elizabeth became more than my lawyer. She is my confidant, my legal protector, my friend. I made sure to update my will, leaving her something for everything she did. And Robert? I haven't had direct contact with him since that letter, but through mutual acquaintances, I know he is still working in construction, paying off the debts, and living alone. There are days when I think about answering his letter. There are days when I think about calling him. But then I remember the box in the shed, the documents about drugging me, the conversations about institutionalizing me, and the wound bleeds again. Maybe one day I can forgive. Not forget. I will never forget. But maybe I can forgive. My therapist says that forgiveness is not for the person who hurt you, it is for yourself, to free yourself from the weight of hatred. I am working on that, slowly, painfully, but I am working. One afternoon, while sewing in my new workshop, Mr. George came to visit me. He stood looking at the dress I was making, a light blue dress with embroidered flowers. "It's beautiful," he commented. "Thank you," I replied. "It's my way of healing. Every stitch is a piece of my life that I reclaim." He smiled. "You know what? You survived something that would have destroyed many people. You are stronger than you imagine, Grace." That night, as I prepared for bed in my silent but secure house, I thought about everything that had happened. The fake trip, the night spying from Mr. George's window, the shed and its secrets, the early morning when I held my breath, seeing the complete truth, the confrontation, the victory, the pain, the loneliness that came after. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a woman of 62, with more wrinkles than before, with eyes that were sadder, but also wiser. I saw a survivor. I saw someone who had been betrayed by the one she loved most, and yet was still standing. I learned that love can be the perfect disguise for a trap, I whispered to my reflection. But I also learned that self-love is the strongest shield against any betrayal. I turned off the light and lay down in my bed, in my house, under my roof. Alone, yes. Hurt, of course. But free, the owner of my destiny. And that, after everything I went through, was more valuable than anything. The months continued to pass, and life found a new rhythm, a slower, quieter, but genuine rhythm. I started attending an embroidery group at the neighborhood church. I met other women my age, each with her stories, her pains, her triumphs. I felt part of something new. Mr. George introduced me to a gardening club. On Saturday morning, we meet to exchange cuttings, share techniques, and talk about flowers and plants. I learned that life continues even after the greatest storms, that it is possible to rebuild, that it is possible to be happy again. In a different way, maybe more cautious, but real. One of those Saturday afternoons, while pruning the rose bushes in the garden, I saw a car stop in front of the house. My heart raced when I recognized who got out of the car. It was Robert. He was different, thinner, wearing simple clothes of someone who works hard, unshaven beard, tired eyes. We stood looking at each other for a long moment. He at the gate, me in the middle of the garden with the pruning shears still in my hand. "Hello, Mum," he said in a low voice, almost a whisper. "Hello, Robert," I replied. My voice came out firmer than I expected. He looked at the ground. I know I don't have the right to be here. I know you don't want to see me. But today marks a year since everything happened, and I needed to come. I needed to see you, even if only from afar. A year. I hadn't realized so much time had passed. He continued speaking, the words coming out quickly as if he had rehearsed them 1,000 times. I've changed, Mum. I know that doesn't erase what I did. Nothing can erase it. But I've changed. I go to therapy every week. I've paid off 3/5 of the debts. I work honestly. I wake up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to the construction site. And every day I carry the weight of knowing that I betrayed the person who loved me most in this world. Tears started running down his face. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I didn't come to ask to return, because I know I can't. I just came to say that I am sorry, and that you were right about everything. In throwing me out, in disinheriting me, in showing me that actions have consequences. I stood still, holding the shears, feeling my own heart clench. A part of me wanted to run to him, hug him like I used to when he was a child and hurt himself. But another part, the part that was still bleeding, kept me in my place. Robert wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I'm leaving now. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be a better person. That every day I fight to be someone you could be proud of, even knowing that day may never come. He turned to leave. And then, without thinking much, my voice came out. Robert. He stopped. He turned around. I took 2 steps toward the gate. Are you really going to therapy? I asked. Every week, he replied quickly. Every Thursday at 7 o'clock in the evening. It has helped me understand many things. To see how I was manipulated, but also how I let myself be manipulated. How greed blinded me. How I almost destroyed the most important person in my life. I nodded slowly. And the debts? I have already paid $88,000 of the $160,000. I work hard. I work overtime whenever I can. I sleep little, but I don't care. It's the least I can do to fix the mess I made. We stood in silence for a moment. The wind rustled the leaves of the trees around us. I'm not ready to forgive you, Robert, I said finally, my voice shaky but firm. What you and Pamela planned to do to me was too cruel, too calculated. I know, Mum. I know. And maybe I will never be ready, I continued. Maybe this wound will never fully heal. He nodded his head, more tears running. I understand. But I took a deep breath. Maybe with time, a lot of time, we can find a way to rebuild something, not as it was before. That will never be possible again. But maybe something new, something different. His eyes lit up with a small spark of hope. Do you really mean that? I don't know, I admitted honestly. I only know that you are my son. And as much as you hurt me, as much as you broke my trust, there is still a part of me that wants to believe that people can change, that they can be redeemed. Robert sobbed. I will spend the rest of my life trying to prove that I deserve that chance, Mum. I swear I will. Don't make promises to me, Robert, I said, tired. Show me with actions, with time, with consistency. Show that you really have changed. And maybe, just maybe, one day we can sit down at the same table again. He nodded vigorously. I will do it. I will show it. Every day. Can I? Then I nodded slowly. Once a month. No more than that. I am rebuilding my life, Robert. I need space. I need time to heal. Once a month is perfect, he said, his voice full of gratitude. Thank you, Mum. Thank you for not completely closing the door. He went back to the car. Before getting in, he turned around once more. I love you, Mum. I always loved you. Even when I was doing those horrible things. I know that doesn't justify anything, but it's the truth. I didn't answer. I just watched him get into the car and drive away. When the car disappeared around the corner, my legs felt weak. I sat down on a garden bench and cried. I cried everything I had held in during that conversation. Mr. George appeared a few minutes later. He had seen everything from his window, but had respected my privacy. He sat down beside me in silence. You did well, he said finally. You didn't close the door, but you didn't open it completely either. You left a crack, and that's how healing works. Little by little. Cautiously. Is that right? I asked. I don't know, Grace, he replied honestly. Only time will tell. But you did the right thing by giving him the opportunity to show it. And you did the right thing by making it clear that words are not enough, that you need to see real change. In the following days, I thought a lot about that encounter, about Robert's words, about the possibility that one day we could rebuild some kind of relationship. It wouldn't be like before. Broken trust never rebuilds the same way. There is always a crack. But maybe it could transform into something new, something built not on naivety, but on awareness, on clear boundaries, on mutual respect earned through effort. Elizabeth told me that I did well not to close all the doors, that forgiveness is a process, not an event, that it can take years, or it may never happen completely, and that it's okay, that I had the right to heal at my own pace. Today, as I write this story sitting in my sewing workshop, surrounded by colourful fabrics and threads, I look out the window at my garden. The rose bushes I pruned that Saturday are blooming beautifully. Red, yellow, pink, symbols of renewal, of things that seemed dead, but returned to life with care and time. I learned so many lessons in these last few months. I learned that trust is fragile and precious, that we must protect it, especially from the people closest to us, because they are the ones who can cause the worst wounds. I learned that intuition doesn't lie, that when something feels wrong, it probably is wrong, that we must trust our instincts, even when everyone says we are exaggerating. I learned that legal documents are important, that powers of attorney and wills must be guarded carefully, that it is never too early to protect our assets and our autonomy. I learned that solitude is not the worst fate, that sometimes it is better to be alone than to be surrounded by people who betray you, that true friends like Mr. George and Elizabeth are worth more than blood. I learned that forgiveness is for the one who forgives, not for the one who is forgiven, that we can choose to forgive to free ourselves from hatred, or we can choose not to forgive, and that is okay too. That healing has no instruction manual. And I learned that even after the worst storms, even after the greatest betrayals, life continues. That we are stronger than we imagine, that we can rebuild, that we can be happy again. In a different way, perhaps. More cautious, more conscious, but real and genuine. I look at the woman I have become. I am no longer that naive Grace who believed that family was sacred regardless of anything. Now I know that family is built on respect, honesty, and true love, not just on blood. I have scars, some visible, many invisible, but I also have strength, wisdom, autonomy, and a peace that comes from knowing I defended my dignity, that I did not let myself be destroyed, that I fought and won. Sometimes at night, before falling asleep, I still think about everything that happened. The fake trip, the nights watching from the window, the box in the shed, the documents that proved the complete conspiracy against me. And I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't trusted my intuition, if I had ignored the signs, if I hadn't faked that trip. I would probably be in an asylum now, drugged, confused, while my son and daughter-in-law enjoyed my house, living off my property, visiting me once a month to keep up appearances. The thought gives me chills. But it didn't happen, because I was shrewd, because I had courage, because I had the help of the right people, and because I never gave up on myself. Robert calls me once a month as we agreed. The conversations are short. He talks about work, about therapy, about the debts he is paying off. I listen. Sometimes I comment on something, sometimes I just listen. I'm not ready for more yet. Maybe I never will be. Or maybe in a few years we can have coffee together. Talk for real. Rebuild something small but real. I don't know. The future will tell. For now, I live one day at a time. I sew. I garden. I drink coffee with Mr. George. I go to the embroidery group. I take care of my house. I sleep in peace, knowing that every inch of this place is mine. That no one can kick me out of here. That I built legal walls strong enough to protect myself. And occasionally I look at the rose bushes in the garden and think that I am like them. I was brutally pruned by betrayal. I bled. I almost died. But with time, care, and a lot of self-love, I am blooming again. Different, maybe. More cautious. Certainly, but alive. Strong. And mine. Completely mine. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part left you speechless. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't publish here. I'll see you there.